Hello, I'm Nigel Slack and this is Talking Sheffield. On tonight's show I've got two guests. My first is Dave Dilner of Sheffield Tree Action Groups, otherwise known as STAG, who'll be talking about the Street Trees campaign. And in the second half hour I'll be talking to Calvin Payne, who's an independent local democracy candidate standing in May's local elections. So first to Dave Dilner. Dave, welcome to the show.
Good evening, Nigel.
I'd like to start with a fairly straightforward question. How and why did STAG come about?
Right. At the back end of 2014, I formed Save the Healy Trees, Say No to the Bus Lane, which was a group specifically formed to fight the proposed installation of a bus lane on Prospect Road in Healy, which, for those people that don't know it, runs along the bottom of the Healy City Farm.
I know the way.
A very well-loved and well-visited local and citywide amenity. Originally, they planned to take over 189 trees down to build that bus lane, and after the first period of what they called a consultation, and what I did not call a consultation, they reduced the figure to 129 trees. These were all mature, healthy trees, and the reason we were being given for the installation of the bus lane was, after much probing, they didn't want to tell us at first, was to save 1 minute on a bus journey during the early morning and evening rush hour both ways. To cut a long story short, well, no, I won't actually cut it short, because...
Feel free.
When they originally, they being Sheffield City Council, they called a period of consultation which wasn't very well publicised. They informed 100 local addresses adjacent to Healy City Farm and Prospect Road. I'm guessing at random, since some houses on the streets got them and some neighbours didn't. I've since been given to understand that that was to fulfil their obligations in law.
Right.
Regarding consultation, I went to the first consultation. I looked at the plans, and the plan was called Plans for the 24-hour bus lane, and I said to one of the planning officers there, what does this mean, a 24-hour bus lane? Sheffield doesn't have 24-hour bus services. He said, oh, don't worry about that, that's just a figure of speech. I kid you not, I could not believe what I was hearing. I said, well, no it isn't. He said, well, you know what I mean. Which will give you some idea of what actually happened at that consultation. No questions were really answered. I wasn't satisfied with this and decided that I would pay a measly sum of £15 from my own pocket, went to a local printer's, had 1,000 leaflets printed, just detailing, top and tailing the story of what was intended, and called a public meeting at Healy Development Trust offices.
Right.
And it was packed out. Only one councillor of the 4 invited turned up, and that particular councillor, I won't use any names or any pack drill, I'm not here to embarrass anyone personally.
Indeed.
But the councillor turned up and just took notes on a laptop, actually announced to me upon arrival that they would not take an active part in the discussion. They were there as an observer. from that, the campaign grew, and this is where I can cut it short, because we did eventually, after many, many meetings, and I was asked at one point during a meeting at the town hall with planning officers, a straight question: why are you causing so much trouble? I said, excuse me, but where do you live? I knew, because I had checked on LinkedIn, and they said, well, what's that got to do with anything? I said, well, I live in Healy. I know where you live. That's why I've asked you that question. I live in Healy. I care about my local environment. I love the area around that farm. Anyway, we won insofar as that the council, rather than say that they were not going to proceed with the plan, the official announcement was that they would shelve for a minimum period of 2 years, and that's where that stands. Now, towards the end of the campaign, I became aware through listening to Radio Sheffield of the other campaign, another campaign that had actually started before ours in Healy, over at Rustlings Road. The Save Our Rustlings trees, as they were at that time. I watched a meeting on Look North on Rustlings Road outside the park, at which Darren Butt from Amy was present. He's one of their management staff. And he quite blatantly, after the campaigners were interviewed and said why they felt the trees should be retained, he said, well, these trees are coming down. So, at which point I sort of I jumped up and shouted at the TV.
As you do, yes.
Yeah. Oh, so you think so, do you? Words to that effect, anyway. And I got involved in a phone-in the next day to say that exactly what was happening with our campaign, although I did not want to take any of the focus away from the SORT campaign. After that radio programme, I was contacted by Louise Wilcoxon, who had asked Radio Sheffield if they would give her my number. Radio Sheffield rang me, asked if that was okay. I said yes, so she rang me up, and I was then appraised a little bit more of what their campaign was actually trying to achieve. Shortly afterwards, because of the publicity that the SORT campaign were getting, I became aware of other sort of noises from elsewhere, other areas of the city, where people were very concerned about learning that lots of their trees were due to disappear. Under this Streets Ahead programme, and I'll say from the outset, we welcome the Streets Ahead programme. It's great that we're not going to be known as Pothole City anymore. Indeed. It's great to have the better pavements. It's certainly great. I'm not a motorist myself, but I do travel in cars and on buses. And I've seen the state of some of the roads. Still see them around Healy in certain pockets. So we welcome that progress that's being made along that avenue. However, when it comes to felling mature, healthy trees, for that work to proceed more quickly, thus making greater profit for a vast multinational company's shareholders, because that's what this amounts to. If the trees are not there, they get a double whammy. They can work faster because their planing machine can move along the pavement. unimpeded by trees, and that takes up the surface of the pavement, and the other gang comes behind and relays it, resurfaces it. If they have to work around the tree by hand, if they leave the tree there, that takes time, which also means greater cost, which eats into the profits of this £2.2 billion contract. So Amy will tell you all the time that the contracts there, they get paid whatever they do. Yeah, probably. But the fact of the matter is that they are a multinational company whose prime objective is to make profit for their shareholders. That comes before any of the trees that on the highway in Sheffield. Let's make no bones about that. Yeah, so I became aware of these other groups starting to form and realised that the council were doing exactly the same thing with these groups that they had done to my group in its infancy. Operating on a process of what they were calling consultation, but was in effect notification.
If I remember rightly, that's the way that the communication section of the contract's actually written, is that Amy will notify people about the works that are going on rather than consult on the works that are going on.
Exactly. It occurred to me that this almost divide and rule series of tactics that the council were employing would come a cropper, or that they would have to fight harder to get their way if these groups amalgamated. I made contact with each individual group and each individual area, first by email and then by going out and meeting people, called a meeting again of any of the group leaders who wanted to come, with outlined the idea to form an umbrella group, get the groups together, let the leaders of these groups amalgamate, and in unity is strength. All for one and one for all, as it became. STAG was actually formed that night. We had a logo designed, and the rest is history.
Yes, yeah. Excellent example of community coming together from different neighbourhoods to get together on one individual campaign. In brief, because there's been an awful lot of publicity about what you're doing and how you're doing it, but in brief, what's your campaign trying to achieve? What's the ultimate goal?
The ultimate goal is to see Sheffield City Council implement what should have been implemented before this PFI contract should ever have been signed. We want to see the implementation of a comprehensive tree strategy. Sheffield, for all its boasts about being the greenest city in the UK, perhaps the greenest city in Europe, does not have a tree strategy. Julie Daw will tell you that yes, we do, as she told me at a recent Meet the Cabinet meeting in Newfield Green. She said they have a tree strategy and it's called the 6Ds. That is not a tree strategy. Not that as would be recognised by any arboricultural association anywhere in this country, in Europe, or in fact in the rest of the world. Now that is fact.
So the ultimate aim is this tree strategy, to get that in place.
It must be formed using cost-benefit analysis, environmental impact assessments, using the precautionary principle. None of this is done at present. None of this is done. Okay.
Now, clearly you felt that your initial concerns when you expressed them to both Amy and the council weren't listened to and weren't taken seriously. Because I've been at a couple of council meetings when you were there, and you clearly felt after those meetings that you'd, to a certain extent, been dismissed, or the answers that were given were not as full or as clear as they might be.
if indeed there were answers at all in the vast majority of cases.
Now, the council have said and would presumably suggest that they have listened to your concerns and they have offered some compromises, like the independent tree panel that's being set up. How did that independent tree panel go down with the campaigners?
I'll speak for myself. I don't accept for a minute that that panel is independent.
Okay.
And the matter of the independent tree panel and the process by which it came into being, i.e. the surveys, is before the judge. It's part of the action in the High Court at the moment.
Right.
So I'm quite happy to let the judge decide. I will say that when he looked at the original claim, it did not take him very long to see the full merits and strength of my case and to award immediate relief, which resulted in the injunction.
Yeah.
And it doesn't completely ban felling, the injunction, just to clear that up. There is provision in there, if the council want to fell a tree because it's dangerous, they have to employ the services of an independent chartered arboriculturalist who must come in, fully examine the tree, sign a declaration to say that in his professional opinion that tree is of an immediate danger to members of the public and needs to be felled. And only under those circumstances can they fell a tree until such time as the injunction is lifted.
Okay, so you felt the need eventually to go to court and take out this...
Sadly, yes.
This application for a judicial review.
It's ridiculous, isn't it?
Well, quite.
I am not pleased with the fact that citizens of Sheffield have had to take their own counsel to the High Court in London to be listened to.
I understand exactly what you're saying on that one. And as you say, you won the first round of that. You have this injunction now to stop the majority of felling. As you say, dangerous trees can still be felled. What does that review intend to look at? And when will it take place? The judicial review.
Well, there is no time limit to the judicial review.
Right.
The figure of 3 months has been mentioned, but that's really a ballpark figure, and there's nothing in the actual judgment that speaks about 3 months.
Okay.
I do know that that Sheffield City Council have to give 48 hours notice of their intention to appeal. To date, that has not been done, although, as I understand it, they do seek to appeal.
Right.
We have been notified that they will seek to appeal, and I think, again, I'm not 100% certain, but I think the deadline for that is probably around the beginning of March, so they don't have much time.
No, indeed.
I'm sure they will appeal, and I await them giving the details of their appeal to my barrister so that we can then see how we proceed.
In the meantime, the council do appear to be moving forward with developing what they would probably term a new trees and woodland strategy. You've been calling for that, obviously, from the very beginning, and they are, I understand, holding a drop-in event at the town hall this Friday to consult on that. Will STAG be getting involved in that process?
Not as a body. Individual members of STAG will engage during the day, and we will be holding a demonstration. We, STAG, will hold a demonstration. We will have a table out there giving information to members of the public as they pass by.
Okay, smashing.
I will make a speech from the town hall steps probably around about 5:30 p.m. as people are going home.
Right. In that case, we're coming very quickly to the end of our time. I'll say thank you very much for your time today, Dave. And if people want to get involved with the campaign and want to contact STAG, look on Facebook and you'll find them there under STAG. Thank you.